Welcome to the debate. Today, we are examining the core architectural decision behind Projino, which is this comprehensive self-hosted project management system we've been reviewing. Projino really sets itself apart by emphasizing quite heavily centralized integration. It merges traditional task management and team collaboration with some pretty robust financial and procurement modules. So the central question emerging from this material, it feels foundational really for how these big systems are built. Does Projino's decision, this foundational choice to create an all-in-one platform, does it provide a critical synergistic advantage for making decisions based on data? Or does this maybe over-centralization introduce inherent architectural complexity and specialized technical risks that ultimately undermine its overall operational efficiency? My position is, pretty firm on this. The integrated nature of Projino is its chief strength. It ensures total clarity and financial health through, unified data streams and this mandatory cross-functional linkage.
Okay. And while I acknowledge the tremendous theoretical appeal of that unity, I definitely come at it from a different way. I believe that forcing the marriage of fundamentally distinct organizational functions, you've got high-velocity project execution on one hand and complex sort of governance-heavy financial procurement on the other. Forcing them into a monolithic application creates, unavoidable technical complexity. This bloat, I think, introduces disproportionate risks, especially when you think about precise access control and just system scalability, particularly in a self-hosted environment.
Right, but the value proposition, for me, it starts and ends with the data. The strength of Projino lies in that 360-degree view that the centralized data structure enables. And we see this linkage, it's explicit in the schema we looked at. Key project definitions, like the total project budget held in the project's data, are intrinsically linked to the procurement request and the expense tracking systems. This isn't just, convenient. It provides immediate, actionable intelligence that's frankly impossible in decoupled tools. Consider the ability to instantly generate a budget variance report, one that shows real-time percentage spent against allocated funds. That level of instantaneous cross-functional analysis without complex middleware or scheduled synchronization, that's a hallmark of these unified systems with strong asset properties. And furthermore, centralizing internal messaging and the document repository right alongside core tasks, it fundamentally changes team dynamics. It ensures critical project decisions aren't fragmented across half a dozen different external platforms.
I see why you emphasize that consolidated visibility. I do. But let's look at the costs, the actual costs required to achieve it. Forcing these, wildly disparate functional disciplines into a single application creates an enormous architectural burden. You mentioned collaboration and tasks, sure, but the system also has to accommodate and manage 4 distinct and, frankly, often operationally conflicting roles. You've got the high-level admin, the execution-focused project manager, the production-level team member, and the highly specialized financial manager. This forces the system to manage permissions with incredible granularity. The technical requirements demand control over access points ranging from simple task lists all the way to highly sensitive corporate views, like the financial reporting dashboard or the user management screens. Any failure in configuration, even a small one, immediately introduces a systemic security flaw. And crucially, the inclusion of deeply specialized workflow components, like defining those multi-step procurement approval chains, it bloats the core system. It sacrifices the dedicated performance and agility that modules focused purely on project execution might otherwise enjoy.
Okay, let's focus specifically on that specialized financial function then, because I think it's the component that most critically justifies the integration model. The procurement module, with its multi-step approval structures, ensures transparency and, importantly, strict adherence to defined project budgets. This integrated financial discipline, the seamless, real-time comparison of budget versus actual costs, it's essential. It's essential for senior executives who are seeking strategic oversight and governance. The financial manager's entire function, basically monitoring total liabilities, cash flow impact, remaining budget across the whole portfolio, it relies entirely on the mandatory centralization of project definition and expenditure tracking. Without combining those two streams, that high-level strategic control just, it dissolves.
Okay, while I appreciate the goal of that strategic oversight, I see the integrated financial workflows not so much as discipline, but as a fundamental organizational constraint imposed on the people actually doing the work. The source material shows that these procurement structures, which rely on detailed approval workflow tables, as you noted, they can be quite rigid. This structure forces the project manager into a dependency loop. So if a PM needs to simply log an expense for, say, a necessary software license, or maybe get approval for a quick vendor contract, the process gets routed through roles external to the project team, the financial manager, maybe then the admin for sign-off. The project manager is held accountable for the deadline, right? Yet their ability to execute is tied to a potentially lengthy external financial queue.
This specialized, heavy bureaucratic load, centralized under the same application roof as high-velocity project work. It introduces functional bottlenecks that directly impede timely project completion. And this leads directly back to my concern regarding security segmentation, because the architecture demands highly restrictive separation of duties. You've got highly sensitive financial data residing in the same database context as, low-level task data. A typical team member, they need access only to their own task list, maybe project-specific documents, but they must be rigorously barred from reviewing sensitive data, like the user list or high-level strategic analysis reports, like the risk matrix dashboard, for example. So my question is, how scalable is the administrative burden here? How effectively can an admin truly manage precise access control over every single page, every report, every internal API key required to enforce this separation without constant meticulous auditing? The segmentation challenge is amplified precisely because you've taken inherently diverse functional areas and housed them in a single structure. It seems like a management nightmare waiting to happen.
I'm not convinced that the centralization inherently introduces greater security risk. Actually, I'd argue it formalizes and manages that risk more effectively than siloed systems ever could. The Projino architecture is specifically designed from the ground up to handle this granularity robustly through role-based access control, or RBAC. The system uses a dedicated permission structure. It allows for the precise definition of access keys, things like manage documents or view risk matrix report. This structure enforces separation of duties architecturally. It ensures, for example, that a team member logging in sees a lightweight dashboard focused only on their current workload and pending tasks, while the admin sees the comprehensive user distribution and permission management panels. By linking permissions to roles, the security model scales horizontally across organizational function, not vertically by constantly tweaking individual users. It manages the necessary complexity instead of, pretending it doesn't exist. And we also have to address the technical overhead. But in the context of organizational autonomy, Projino is offered as a self-hosted solution, crucially with source code included. This architecture is a feature, right? It's designed to meet the requirement for deep organizational customization without external vendor dependence. But maybe the single greatest technical benefit of this consolidation is the unified audit trail. The activity log table captures user actions across all integrated modules: tasks, finance, meetings, documents, approvals, everything. This provides a complete, chronologically verifiable record of interaction and data changes across the entire enterprise function covered by the system. This comprehensive governance record is a massive, often overlooked benefit that dispersed systems simply cannot replicate without complicated and frankly costly data piping solutions.
That's a compelling argument regarding the audit trail and organizational control. I'll grant you that. But that governance benefit hardly justifies the performance penalty this structure seems likely to impose. Have you truly considered the performance implications of combining wildly diverse computational loads onto a single technical stack, a self-hosted PHP MySQL instance? We are forcing the system to handle heavy, resource-intensive operations like rendering interactive, visually complex reports, the full project Gantt chart being a prime example. At the exact same time, it's managing constant, small, transactional data writes needed for real-time internal messaging and those complex financial approval lookups. This just screams resource contention to me,
potential database locking issues, a single point of failure for scalability. The system has to perform heavy I/O operations for reporting and yet somehow maintain low latency for chat simultaneously.
It feels like trying to be all things to all parts of the stack at once. And while having the source code grants customization, sure, the self-hosted client is then forced to manage this highly complex, tightly coupled database configuration, one built to satisfy the competing needs of 4 distinct business units all at once. This inherent lack of decoupling means the architecture is, well, inherently less scalable than adopting separate, optimized services. Say a specialized, highly performant tool for real-time chat, integrated via API, and a stable, ledger-focused database for the financial side. The integrated complexity, I think, offsets that autonomy benefit you mentioned.
I think you might be overestimating the necessary resource contention, though. While the loads are diverse, yes, they are managed within a unified database structure. This allows for highly optimized indexing and querying, specifically across those fields that matter most for strategic insight, like budget against expenditures. The cost of managing one complex, robust database is often far lower, in my experience, than the infrastructure overhead of managing synchronization, consistency, and maintenance for 3 or 4 separate decoupled services, each with its own scaling challenges and API dependencies. Projino chooses to internalize complexity, yes, but it does so to deliver consistency and strategic clarity.
And Projino pays for that internal complexity with reduced agility and increased performance vulnerability. You simply cannot optimize a single database engine equally well for high latency reporting and low latency transactional chat. It's a fundamental trade-off. The moment high-demand reporting is run, transactional operations are likely to suffer. This is an unavoidable architectural consequence. By centralizing the approval queue and the financial ledger within the execution platform, Projino makes the project manager, the one who needs agility the most, subservient to the bureaucratic demands of the finance manager, who naturally prioritizes governance above all else.
Ultimately, Projino's unified structure is an intentional, strategic design choice. It's aimed squarely at delivering invaluable analytical reporting and firm financial governance by making that cross-functional data linkage mandatory. For executives, this clarity and control, well, they justify the structured complexity required by the sophisticated access management and mandated financial workflow systems.
Conversely, I maintain the system's dedication to absolute integration results in an oversized, arguably bloated structure, where highly specialized functions, particularly that rigid procurement module, place an undue bureaucratic and technical burden on the core process of actually getting projects done. The challenge of maintaining optimal security and performance across wildly different functional requirements within a single, self-hosted monolith, that remains a significant drawback for me.
Indeed, the value of Projino's comprehensive integrated platform ultimately hinges on the key organizational choice, prioritizing that unified data visibility and comprehensive financial control over the inherent simplicity and perhaps the technical agility afforded by deploying specialized decoupled tools.
Agreed. And there is clearly much more to explore within this comprehensive material regarding these necessary trade-offs between architectural integration and operational complexity in enterprise solutions like this one.